Hey guys, it's election day, and you're probably hearing tons of predictions about how things are going to shake out. Well, we saw this post trending on Instagram claiming that during the 2016 election cycle, the New York Times published this graphic predicting that the Democratic presidential nominee, Hillary Clinton, had a 91% chance of winning against the Republican candidate, Donald Trump, who, of course, won the election. This post urges people to ignore the polls, but did the New York Times predict a nearly guaranteed win for Clinton? First things first, let's talk about how election forecasting works. According to the Pew Research Center, pollsters survey people in order to gain insight into the specific perspectives of groups, cities, or states. The results are then used to estimate the probability of a specific outcome. So in this case, the polls were used to predict the probability of Hillary Clinton winning the 2016 election. It's also worth noting that polls usually list a margin of error, which is basically the number of points greater or lesser than we would expect the results of the actual population to vary from the results of the sample. Next, let's make sure this was an actual New York Times graphic. This was pretty simple. I did a keyword search and found this New York Times article that included the graphic posted on October 18, 2016, the same date listed in the Instagram post. So yes, this graphic was published by the New York Times, but it was posted 21 days before the election, which fell on November 8th. Since this post says that we should ignore the polls, let's take a look at some other New York Times forecasts that were posted a little closer to the election to see how they vary. That original article linked to another New York Times page with the latest election polls, which in 2016 was being updated daily. The page was last updated on November 8th, Election Day, and it had Clinton polling at 45.9% and Trump polling at 42.8%, with Clinton's chance of winning being 85%. So to recap, on October 18th, election models suggested that Hillary Clinton had a 91% chance of winning, which dropped to 85% on Election Day. As we know now, Clinton won the popular vote, but they lost the election because of the Electoral College. So does this mean that you should never trust polls and ignore them altogether? Well, that's kind of a tough question. Pollsters have learned a lot since 2016, but some polls just aren't that great. From a media literacy standpoint, if you're going to be reading a poll, you should be checking to see how large the sample size is, if it's a random sample, and what the standard deviation is. Plus, you're going to want to see who conducted this poll. Polls with super partisan sponsors probably aren't your best bet. So it's important you check out their methodologies. And of course, we can't forget about that margin of error. According to the Pew Research Center, the real margin of error in polls is often about double the one reported. The notion that a typical margin of error is plus or minus 3 percentage points can lead people to think that polls are more precise than they really are. Polls can be tricky to read, so make sure you're doing your research and checking in with multiple sources. But as for this Instagram post, we'll rate it as legit. It is true that the New York Times published that graphic leading up to the election that showed Clinton with a 91% chance of winning. And we'll look into it. See you next time.